sort of needs to be mobile when I'm on the road. When I'm in my house, then I have the ability to use hardware and to insert those things into my mixes. So the first thing I would say is there is really no argument about analog versus digital. Get that out of your mind. Analog is analog, digital is digital. They both work well. It's just you working the way that you want to work and the things that you want to add to songs, right? So I always tell my students that because they have this sort of I don't know, almost a lust for the old way that we used to work. And it's really good. There are some things that are really good about analog, but I worked in an analog studio. Things break. If you were recording keyboards or anything like that and you went for lunch and you came back, things would drift and you'd have to retune them. And there's all this stuff that you had to go to maintain analog gear. But analog gear sounds really good. Sounds really, really good. So that's where I normally start with people, to let you know that all these techniques or the things that I do are just based off of just years of working. The other thing that's completely different about me is that I do not understand, don't know, could never understand presets. I like templates to a certain degree, but I don't like presets. Why? Because every single song is different, and every single song has a different sound. So I think we got into this thing where people were like, oh, well, this is a starting point. And then students started to use the starting point as what the final thing is, right? So be very careful when you're talking about this preset, and I see people arguing about it, and I'm like, you would literally need the same exact vocal that I have recorded by the same artist on the same day, in the same room, with the same temperature, and they had to eat the same thing that day in order for this preset to make sense. The other thing is that I don't mix that way where I'm like looking at numbers. I don't look at numbers. I turn knobs and I listen. And when it feels good to me, that's when I stop. I have very specific things that I'm doing when I'm trying to mix. Most of the time, and this is a sad part about most of the work that I do, I'd say a good 30 to 40% of my time is spent cleaning up a session. It's spent correcting things that were given to me, which made me think about like where to start. I'm not just going to stay in one session, but I went back and I was like, okay, let me show you guys sort of like the session that I got for this mix competition, right? So when Wavy hit me and was like, hey, can we use a Ruben song? I was like, great, like I'll have Ruben just record a song and you guys can mix this song. This song is a perfect example of what I get on a daily basis, right? Everyone is not blessed to have Ben as the recording engineer, right? Where everything is absolutely perfect. Most people are dealing, and especially people in here, are dealing with either amateur engineers or people who are recording themselves, people who know just enough to get it done, right? So there's a lot of things that I run into that you guys may think like, oh, you're the only one running into it. And the very first thing, as you see when I open up this session, is missing files, right? So this is the way Ruben sent it to me. So I'm going to skip the missing files. And then I start to look at the session to see what I need to do inside of this session, right? I obviously look and see this top thing. I hope you guys can see me moving my cursor. Can you see that? All right, perfect. So when you see this missing file, I'm like, oh man, what is this? And then I pull down and I'm like, oh, it was something that he had at the end of the song, and then he replaced it with something else but never took that track out. Right? Then I would go, okay, so I don't necessarily need this thing. Or that was me just guessing, but I would call Ruben and be like, was that thing supposed to be in there? And he's like, no, okay, I can take it out. The other thing that I do is sort of set up the session the way that I like to see things. I hate having the names on it. I'm a weirdo like that. I know a lot of people like to see it. I hate having the clip game and all of that up. I name whatever this file is. This is another point of when you get things. You're going to get sessions that say exactly what this says. Audio 1, audio 1 duplicate, audio 1 duplicate 2, audio 1 duplicate 3. I know everybody here hates it. But this is the reality of the world that we work in. So the first thing I'm doing is listening to the song and going to go through and label what everything is. The other thing, I think Ben kind of hit on this the other day, is that most people are getting an MP3 or a WAV file. Hopefully you can ask for a WAV file, and people send it to you. But when you get an MP3, you have to be really careful. Again, I'm holding this microphone. I need my left hand to be able to move fast, but I'm holding this microphone. So when I look at this, obviously there's some space in the beginning, right? Boom. I'm like, oh, all this space right here needs to come out, because then I need to put this on grid. So this is all of what I'm telling you of what I start to do when I'm cleaning up a session. The other thing is that I'm looking at this, and obviously Ruben recorded himself. So if we look at this beginning part, it's way lower than these other things of whatever's in the verse. These are the things that I start to attack first. Right? So I'll listen to this and say, why is this so low compared to everything else?
Yeah. It's the Spirit of God. Yeah. See, the Spirit of God is omnipotent. And it works on.
The reason I'm listening down is I'm trying to see what perspective this has in the song. So when I listen to a song and I look at this and I go, okay, how am I going to start attacking this after I put in all the music? But I kind of, if an artist gives me a 2-track, I kind of start messing with the vocals immediately. I'm probably hitting the producer and saying, hey, can you send me the track? That's potluck sometimes. So producers will go, you'll get a range of, hey, I'll send it in 5 minutes, and you'll get a range of, I need to bounce it, and you'll get a range of, I don't know where the beat is. I did this 2 years ago. So that's going to now let you know, okay, this is going to become a 2-track mix if that becomes the situation. But these are all the real things that I'm going through. I am a clip game king. When I'm trying to think about audio, and if it was recorded properly, obviously this beginning part would be at the same level as the rest of the verses, right? I've listened to this already, and there's a lot of background noise in what he's saying. Yeah, he doesn't have this solo isolated. This is all just my normal stuff, right? That has another thing to do with organization of the session. So I don't like when all the tracks are on top of everything. So my main thing is I bring my master up to the top. I like my master to be at the top of the session. The way I visualize sessions is the way it would have been spread out on a board, right? And this is all, everything I'm telling you, there's no right or wrong. This is just my preference of the way that I work. So when I was spread out on a board, the kick is on channel 1, the snare is on channel 2, the hi-hat is on channel 3, the drums are first. Then there's going to be bass, then you can select maybe keyboards or guitars or something like that, then the vocals are all the way at the end. It's just the way my mind works. I have plenty of great mixers where they put the vocals at the top of the session. It's just the way I work. It allows me to see everything. So I'm also looking to be like, okay, he busts this to bus 3 and 4. Where's bus 3 and 4? Let me bring this up. This is obviously like all of nope, it's 5 and 6. What the hell? So bus 5 and 6 is labeled Vox, right? So that would go right next to whatever it's dealing with. I don't like jumping around in my session. If I'm dealing with vocals, I want wherever they're going to be next to them, right? So I would move this back down to wherever it was. And my reverbs and things are separated. So any reverb, any effects that have to do with the music, that's going to be at the top above all of the music. So it's sort of my way of working. If you remember when you were on analog boards, or for those of us that can remember, number 1 didn't start way at the corner, right? People were smart enough to know that number 1 should be close enough so that you're sitting in the middle of the board. And there'd be auxiliary channels that you could just, extra channels. It might end up being 80-something track board, and the ones all the way to the left might start at like 60, right? Whatever that is. So all of my reverbs and everything for the music is on the left side. All the reverbs and everything for my vocals were either in that center section or all the way to the right. So that's how I differentiate all of my different reverbs in this style of working. I have a bunch of different styles. But that's normally where I start. I would also be listening to this and looking at this plugin, like all of the plugins as I'm playing it. The reason I'm not playing is because I'm talking to you guys, I don't want to talk over the music, but I'll be looking to see what Ruben did. Most of the time, artists just have some default thing. He just put this on there. Crisis or somebody in our studio probably told him, like, this is the preset to put on your voice, right? All he did was just bump a little bit in the high. So I'm like, I could take that off. I'd rather deal with what I'm dealing with. To go to Leslie's point, if you have plugins where someone has set and designed a sound and it sounds really good, leave it, right? They've already done the work for you. I know that this is my artist, and Ruben wasn't doing that as an engineer. This is just him going along with what someone told him. So I would initially just take this off, right? Because I'm not going to use this. I'll probably use the Pro Q3 on his vocal. Cool. My point of listening to this, yeah, okay.
Yeah, this goes out to you.
So it's a lot of room. If you guys can hear, I can't hear direct sound in here, but it's a lot of room in the background, right? But my point is I'm trying to get this one thing here at the same level as everything else, right? So now I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Also what I would do, and I'm going slow here, but my main cleanup will probably be a good hour or 2 hours, right? This is the mix time. So I normally tell artists or ask artists to give me a couple hours. Normally I would say, hey, I get 3 or 4 hours to like kind of get into my groove before you come and start putting your finger in my batter and tell me how it tastes, right? Like let me start to cook first before you tell me how it tastes. I have a great rapport with all of the artists that I work with, and they know that that's the way that I work. So I would start doing things like cutting all of this background noise out. I know we have gates, I know we have all of that stuff, but what does a gate do? Takes out noise. Instead of me sitting here trying to figure out what is the rate, what is all of this, take it out. Just take it out. It's very simple. What you want to do when you're working in digital is also make sure that you're not adding clips and pops and all those other things, right? I have a lot of students that they would then take this and automatically fade everything. You know, I don't do all of that. I just listen down. If there's a click or a pop, I take it out. It's very simple. You're looking for the crossing point of when this is coming down. And I don't know everyone's experience in audio, but I teach students all the time, so I assume that people know nothing when I'm teaching them. So in our digital representation of what audio is doing, it's very simple how a speaker works. A speaker is a transducer. It changes one form of energy to another. All a speaker can do is move forward and backwards. This is how it works. Very simple. All it's doing is pushing air, right? That air, and please, people sometimes like try to sound fancy and they confuse things. So when you hear people talk about like low level frequencies or higher frequencies and this and that, and they're relating that to the electromagnetic spectrum, that is not audio. Audio is the difference in sound pressure level in the air. That's all it is. I'm pushing air. That's how sound works. It's kind of simple, right? The point is that we have these points of going forward and going backward, going forward and going backward. And we call that the phase of wherever something is, right? What phase is it on? Is it moving up and then is it moving down, right? That's the phase of a wave. Not to be confused with the phase of two things clashing. Is everybody clear on that, of what phase is? Phase is a relationship. It's not just one thing. There has to be two things in order for you to have a relationship, right? So we're asking what phase is that in? What that means in just normal talk is that I want to make sure that anytime that I'm cutting at somewhat of a 0 point. To be very specific, I would come in here and you see where like anywhere in here where this crosses 0, that's a great place to cut. Then you don't have to fade. Does that make sense to everybody? Let's just not do things just to do them. That's what I call showing off, right? There's a great thing, and again, it's from being here and learning from everybody. And I was listening to Leslie when he was talking, and it was like, yo, I don't just do things just to do it, just because I know how to do it. I was talking in the back, and I was like, there was a session that I had where